Okay, namaste. Can you talk about what you mean when you say there is a doorway through the emotion? Yeah. It's like sitting with vipassana. It's the same thing. You're sitting with emotion, you're sitting with what's coming, you're sitting with the story, you're sitting with all these things and viewing it in a detached manner without getting caught up in it, with vairagya. That's why one works to develop vairagya through having the practices and not being emotionally, so caught in the storyline of trying to reinvent another way to save oneself. But it's like it's been proven sometimes through vipassana that some guys that are in prison in India were given the vipassana course, and they have to sit. What else do they have to do in jail? A lot of time for sitting. And of course, when you begin to sit, then all the self-justification comes up, and all of the anger and all of the, drama comes up around the storyline where you want to self-justify, and I'm right, and the world's wrong, and they've done this to me, and but they sit, and continue to sit. Year after year after year, continue to sit. And eventually that storyline plays out. And then one goes deeper into that emotion and feels the emotion, and then has a connection and feels the suffering of the other. And the storyline begins to break. I don't care what the storyline is. Same here. It was, sitting with the pain and a lot of pain and suffering that was there in my life, and, a lot of things that happened. And then eventually you start to have some compassion for the other people and perpetrators, whatever, and you start to have compassion. And once that compassion starts to arise, then the storyline begins to break. Then you begin to look at the one that perpetrates these things, and you begin to have even more compassion and looking at their story and why, what's going on, and they're in hell realms, and you begin to have even more compassion. And then you look at your story and you see what's been driving it, what's been fueling it, was based on things that were brought in by somebody else, which were trying to protect their own story, and they didn't have the tools to get what was needed. So it just comes with time, and sitting, and one emotion will give way, a doorway, and you'll see another emotion underneath of it. First there may be anger, and underneath the anger is sorrow, and underneath that sorrow is numbness, and underneath that numbness is compassion. Underneath that compassion is another thing, but it goes layer by layer by layer. But you have to be willing to encounter what's there and sit with it fully. Doesn't matter what drama, storyline comes and goes, comes and goes, comes and goes, and it may be revolving for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 20 years. Okay? But eventually it'll run out of fuel. If you quit feeding it, it will run out of fuel. Okay? And you'll find out what's deeper than that. The doorway to what's below 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 that, prior to that. Okay? Until the last great doorway, that fear of destruction, that fear of whatever it is, that great fear. And eventually one passes through that fear, and one finds out there was nothing to fear, ultimately. But one has to broach that, has to sit with it in order to find the doorway through it and what's prior to it. Okay? Are there any questions, any comments? No? Okay. Namaste.